Think about this. In 1972, CIA officials and US military intelligence, they sit in a candlelit room across from Sybil Leek. Now, she's Britain's most famous witch at the time. Government officials watch her perform a black magic ritual. The government, men trained in espionage and warfare, sit silently and take notes as she channels something from beyond. Then comes a strange voice. It calls itself Caxuulikom, and it has an important message. Earth is a farm. You are the cattle, and your souls are our harvest. The room goes cold. The nation's most powerful defense agencies, those sworn to protect America from foreign enemies, are now face to face with what they believe to be demonic forces masquerading as extraterrestrial entities. It sounds wild. Conspiracy theory on steroids. But what if it's not science fiction? What if it's real life? I'm John Genua. You're watching America's Strangest History. Let's talk about how the US government dabbled in sorcery and the occult. The most alarming part of this is that the government officials may actually have encountered something far darker than they ever could have imagined. They played with fire, and they were about to get burned. Before we dive into that 1972 seance, we need to understand how we even got there. Why were US intelligence officials, people trained to fight communism and launch covert operations, why were they sitting in a room with a witch in the first place? To answer that, we have to go back half a century to a rocket scientist who merged rockets with ritual magic. Jack Parsons. Parsons wasn't your average rocket scientist that even exists. He was co-founder of what would become NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. He's been called the father of modern rocketry in America. By night, Parsons indulged his rather unorthodox interests. He was the head of the lodge of Aleister Crowley's occult order in Pasadena, California, the Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO for short. Crowley was a big deal. He was called the wickedest man in the world by the British press. He practiced ceremonial magic. In 1918, he performed something called the Amalatra working. It's a ritual he believed could open a door to another realm. From that ritual, he sketched a being he named Lamb. It's a bulbous-headed, dark-eyed figure that looks eerily similar to the modern conception of a gray alien. Being the ambitious person he was, Parsons tried to take it a step further. In 1946, alongside a young science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard, he carried out the Babylon working. It was a series of sex magical rituals that were meant to manifest an elemental spirit or moon child. Now, they were attempting to summon an otherworldly force into this world. Now, this sounds nuts, but the timing is uncanny. Just months later, the modern UFO era explodes. It started with Kenneth Arnold's flying saucers in 1947, followed by the Roswell crash. The Collins Elite, an ultra-secret working group that we're about to discuss. They would later see this not as coincidence, but as cause and effect. Meanwhile, Parsons' double life started to catch up with him. He lost his security clearance after the FBI and the Air Force flagged him for leaking Hughes' aircraft documents. They also took issue with his occult affiliations, bad optics. Parsons reportedly planned to move to Mexico and continue his weapons work. But in June 1952, he died in a violent explosion in his Pasadena home laboratory. Officially, it was an accident. To some, it looked like sabotage, or maybe even a ritual gone horribly wrong. And so the seeds of conspiracy were planted. An American rocket scientist by day, knee-deep in Aleister Crowley's magic by night. UFO sightings across the country exploded. Inside the intelligence community, a handful of officials began to wonder if they opened a door that couldn't be closed. The government didn't just wonder about it, they formed what became known as the Collins Elite. It's an alleged secret think tank deep inside the US government that believed UFOs weren't extraterrestrials at all, but instead they were demonic intelligences masquerading as aliens. Got that? In 1972, their concerns took them straight to Sybil Leek, Britain's most famous witch, and to an entity calling itself Caxuulikom. Parsons' life and his suspicious death in 1952 left behind more than just rocket blueprints and occult diaries. Inside the halls of the Pentagon and the CIA, rumors started to spread. What if UFOs weren't what they seemed? What if this is all just an elaborate ruse? A handful of people, some in Air Force intelligence, some in the CIA, others scattered across military research units, they quietly broke away from the standard aliens from space hypothesis. A group of government insiders believed Parsons, Crowley, and others like them opened doors that should have stayed closed. This inner circle came to be known as the Collins Elite. Now, officially, You won't find them listed on any organizational chart. You won't find the doors at Langley labeled Collins Elite. The group operated like a secret think tank. It was purposefully hidden in the shadows of other projects. We recently pulled out a video on one of these other projects, MKOFTEN. Check it out if you get a chance. The Collins Elite reached a radical conclusion. They didn't think UFOs were spaceships from Zeta Reticuli. They believed that they were manifestations of demonic intelligences, specifically fallen angels disguising themselves as extraterrestrials. To the Collins Elite, alien abductions weren't medical experiments with the standard anal probes and all that. They were ritual initiations in disguise. Contactee messages about peace and cosmic brotherhood weren't alien wisdom. They were false gospels intentionally seeded by deceptive spirits. Hold up, because we haven't even gotten to the most chilling part. The Collins Elite saw themselves as America's hidden guardians against spiritual invasion. Kind of reminds me of the superhero Dr. Strange, protecting the world from unseen spiritual forces. But as we'll see, their mission was more dangerous than they could have ever imagined, and it was about to spiral out of control. By the mid-1950s, the United States government wasn't just watching rockets or radar blips. They were quietly dipping their own hands into the world of the occult. Take the case of Frances Swan, a Maine housewife in 1954. She claimed to receive messages from a being named Afa through automatic writing. Now, her hand was guided by a force that she said wasn't her own. Neighbors thought she was crazy, but the US Navy didn't. Officers actually visited her home and tested her. Under trance, Swan allegedly answered technical questions about aviation that she should never have known. Now, at one point, she even told them that a UFO would appear outside. According to later reports, something strange showed up on the radar. Then there was Ruth Montgomery, a respected Washington journalist who transitioned into one of the nation's most famous psychics. She wrote articles claiming that the US Army was experimenting with mind reading and ESP as espionage tools. Now, whether or not her claims were accurate, the FBI and the CIA paid attention. If America's enemies could use psychic spies, the thinking was, shouldn't we? By the late 1960s, things got even darker. The CIA launched a program known as Operation Often. Now, unlike MK Ultra, which focused on drugs and mind control, Operation Often explored something else: demonology, witchcraft, psychic mediums. The agency hired astrologers, psychics, practicing witches, anything you could think of. They wanted to know if supernatural forces could be harnessed for intelligence work. This is where the Collins Elite's worst fears came true. What had started as Crowley and Parsons rituals to open doors was now formally being carried out by the US government itself. Federal agents weren't just studying UFOs. They were attending seances. They were sitting across from witches. They were, from the Collins Elite's perspective, inviting demonic forces into the heart of national security. The MKOFTEN program was later terminated with a two-word kill order: read, destroy. They were citing moral, ethical, and national security concerns. Kind of begs the question, did the Collins Elite issue the kill order? Food for thought. In 1972, they started a fire they couldn't control. They opened a door they couldn't close. They summoned an entity calling itself Caxuulikom. By September 1972, the Collins Elite and the CIA's Operation Often were desperate for answers. They'd been studying UFOs and weird cases of contact and abduction for years, but they lacked confirmation. They wanted a direct, undeniable voice from the other side to manifest, so they went to Sybil Leek. That night, Leek entered a trance surrounded by a mix of intelligence officers, occult operatives, and members of the Collins Elite. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie. The candles flickered. The air was thick. They were about to force open a door that should never have been opened. A voice calling itself Kazulam manifested in the room. Here's just a snippet of what it said. You think you confront extraterrestrials? Ridiculous. The lie is old, the mask is worn. Earth is not your world, it is our pit. Your souls are harvested as fuel. Every living creature, every spark of light in your blood, we feed on it. Contactees praise us. Abductees beg for mercy. They don't know that they worship their jailers. When your scientists gaze up and imagine benevolence, they are blind to the circling vultures who harvest your fear. Chilling words. At one point, Leek, still in a trance, reportedly laughed at the officials' faces. She spat, mocked their faith, and threatened them. You cannot fight us with your bombs or logic. You eat wind and ashes. We own the space your eyes cannot see. The entity claimed its roots extended back to ancient Babylon. It said it watched humanity grow from beyond the mast of gods and angels. It said every false religion was an experiment. So, according to Kazuulikom, the extraterrestrial narrative was just the current disguise. Witnesses described the voice as venomous, spiteful, hysterical, mocking. It fed off their fear. According to later accounts, the Collins elite members admitted that they were shaken. Some considered that Leek may simply be giving them what they wanted. This was more than just an exercise in roleplay. The message, chilling in its clarity, was that this was a spiritual warfare, not cosmic friendship. From that moment on, the Collins elite's mission changed. They no longer saw UFOs as a puzzle. They saw them as a battle for the souls of humanity. The Collins elite didn't just fear aliens, they feared what the aliens claimed to offer, and they believed those claims were lies. Their core conviction, the greatest danger wasn't physical invasion, it was spiritual deception. Here's what they feared and how they planned to fight back. They feared a false messiah, a cosmic savior deception. The aliens would present themselves as benevolent saviors. They'd offer cures and cosmic spirituality. Now that promise would lure humanity away from Christian doctrine towards a new religion of the stars. This new religion was, in effect, a New Age version of Christ, in alien form. They also feared mass miracles and holographic prophecies. The governments, or occult proxies, would stage spectacular appearances, like Jesus in the sky, alien councils, oracles lighting up major cities, all via holograms, satellites, or psychotronic projection, maybe a combination of all three. These miracles would validate the deception. It would lower our defenses and draw people en masse. They were afraid of the power of mind control over spiritual belief. Now, this makes sense in light of the numerous programs that the government was running in the MK programs, mind control for short, MK Ultra, MKOFTEN, MK Search, MK Chitwit. We can keep going. Collins elite believed that UFO encounters already included memory implants, screen memories, automatic writings, revelations. This was all aimed at advancing the enemy's theology. They were concerned about cultural and theological infiltration, media, new spiritual movements, contactee literature that preaches alien peace theology as a parallel or even replacement for Christianity. They feared the idea of soft disclosure used as a Trojan horse. Instead of dramatic landings, the aliens would be introduced gradually, first via anomalies like we see on TV, then public acknowledgement, finally religious assimilation. The Collins elite warned that the final deception is complete once people accept UFO religion as dogma. It would signal the final nail in the coffin. The good news is that the Collins elite had plans to stop this from happening, or at least to fight it. They'd distribute internal papers to sympathetic generals and scientific advisors explaining the demonic model. They encouraged doctrinal seminars in defense circles and trained officers to be spiritually discerning. Now, some Collins elite members believed in fighting fire with fire. The use of counter-ritual, prayer, exorcism, protective sigils, even spiritual wards. Not just intelligence tactics. They tried to recruit Christian ministers with occult experience to partner with military intelligence to nullify these spiritual incursions. The Collins elite monitored contactees and spiritual movements to identify doctrine that might hide demonic influence. They infiltrated New Age groups and flagged narratives that promoted alien theology. When rumors of false miracles circulated, the Collins elite considered developing countermeasures to protect perception, like electromagnetic suppression and psychic shielding through fields and prayer protocols, just to name a couple. The key takeaway here? The Collins elite believed that they should control when and how disclosure of UFOs takes place. They feared surprise disclosure would shock masses into submission. Instead, they preferred a staged, gradual release under theological control. For the Collins elite, the danger wasn't flying saucers in the sky. The danger was what those saucers meant. They believed that the phenomenon was building towards one climactic event, a deception so powerful it could capture the entire world in a single night. They called it the final deception. Here's how they imagined it. This is how it's going to go down. The world's skies fill with lights. Massive craft hover over cities. At the same time, holographic images of religious figures appear in the heavens. Jesus in one country, the Buddha in another, and so forth. The voices all deliver the same message. You were mistaken. We are your creators. Your religions are merely fragments of a single cosmic truth, and now we have returned. In that moment, billions of people would abandon their faith and embrace a new universal religion, one built on illusion of alien saviors. In the Collins elite's eyes, this wasn't disclosure. It was the ultimate trap. The aliens weren't extraterrestrials. They were fallen angels masquerading as gods. And making matters worse, humanity's worship of these false gods would actually feed the deception. The Collins elite said we'd start to see smaller signs like alien contactees who wrote alien gospels, abductees who came back preaching that Christianity was outdated, rumors of Cold War psychotronic experiments that projected visions into the minds of soldiers. So to the Collins elite, these were dress rehearsals for the big show. This sounds nuts. If true, how can we possibly fight back? I'm thinking nukes are not going to be too effective. The Collins elite said that the answer is theology. They wanted to prepare soldiers, scientists, and politicians to reject false miracles when they finally came. Humanity needs to be able to see through the facade. But here's the dark twist. In trying to protect America from deception, the Collins elite began flirting with authoritarian solutions of their own. They pushed for a Christian theocracy and considered forced belief. Things spiraled out of control, and the cure started to look as bad as the disease. From Jack Parsons summoning spirits in his Pasadena mansion to the CIA attending seances with Britain's most famous witch, the story of UFOs and government secrecy is far stranger than science fiction, right? If the Collins elite were right, then America's most powerful defense agencies weren't studying aliens at all. They were staring into the face of demonic deception. Kaxuulikom's message, that Earth is a farm and our souls are the harvest, convinced them that UFOs weren't aliens using advanced technology. This was a spiritual war. Every abduction, every contactee, every flashing light in the sky was, in their eyes, part of one cosmic trap. The greatest irony here is that in trying to protect America from deception, the Collins elite risked becoming deceivers themselves. They pushed for indoctrination. They dreamed of turning the United States into a fortress of theology. In their eyes, salvation required control. That's where the danger really lies. Because whether you believe the story or not, the fact remains that the US government did dabble in sorcery. They tested psychic mediums, hired astrologers, and sat across from witches. They opened doors that might never be shut. The Collins elite saw demons wearing alien masks. Others saw paranoid men chasing shadows. Either way, the question remains. When governments begin playing with the occult in the name of national security, who's really in control? The answer may be far darker than you think. I'm John Genua. You've been watching America's Strangest History. Thanks for watching.